since no other questions, I'm going to go on to a demonstration, which is, I feel like it's really fun in person because I get all these ideas from the crowd and I weave them together into a collaborative comic. But this is slightly different. So I asked people for a suggestion for a character for me to play with, and I only got one suggestion for Carolyn's daughter from over at Wild Rock. She suggested a dragon named Thorntooth as a character. And that is the only suggestion I have received. So instead of debating about it, I suppose I'm just going with a dragon named Thorntooth as my character. Because when you're making your comic, the first thing you do is just get to know your character. I call this the Charles Schulz approach to making comics. Because someone once asked Charles Schulz how he got all of his ideas of what to do with the Charlie Brown characters. And he said, well, I just got to know them and they told me what to do. And I thought, that sounds really easy. And actually, I find this is a really good way, especially if you're doing more of like an improv, like for fun project. If you're not doing it like autobiographically, which a lot of my stuff is, you know, it's a fun break to like, well, just talk to them and see what they want to do. So let's see, I'm going to switch my screens. Okay. So let's see, I'm drawing a dragon named Thorntooth. Oh, great. I'm drawing a dragon. I feel like I've had to draw dragons before and it doesn't go well. Okay. We're going to make this work. Okay, I'm going to stand here. Okay, so I'm drawing a dragon. Wow, what does a dragon look like? In my head, it's, let's think. I guess it's going to have some wings. Maybe it's got little, I don't know, do they have little horn? Is that snorkhorn? I don't even know. Maybe I'm going to draw like a happy dragon because I'm assuming this is terrible. Okay, so I got sort of a, now I'm like going off the page. I'm holding it at a weird angle. This is really bad. I love that I'm drawing terrible art live on the internet. And also, what's he doing? I don't know. Okay, I'm just going to draw this tail. He's got a tail. And he's got like a little tummy. And he's got scales. I'm a role model. You know, what I role model is vulnerability, especially when you're not sure how to draw something. I'll just give him a bunch of scales. Okay, so we have he's got little teeth, you know. He looks like a nice dragon. Okay, and you have Thorntooth. So name. Thorntooth, the dragon. Okay, normally when I start with a character, with a group, the next thing is to figure out, well, yeah, their name. And so the name Thorntooth actually is pretty juicy because you want a name that implies something about your character. That's something that like J.K. Rowling's really good at with the Harry Potter characters is all their names sort of sound like their personality. So just the name Thorntooth already sends like creative ideas in my head. About who this character is, because the next thing I want to figure out besides their name is what do they want? Like, do they have a passion, a dream? I feel like it's sort of the hardest question for anybody to answer. It's like, well, what do I want? What does anybody want? I think it was Kurt Vonnegut that said, even if it's just a glass of water, your character should want something, because that's normally a really big driving force and it makes people care about your character. Because they're sort of wearing their heart on their sleeve in some way, like, oh, this is the thing that I need, that I want. Because there's a vulnerability in that, and I think it makes them relatable. So, wait, I'm going to check on Facebook. I got multiple screens open. Oh, I'm glad someone thinks he's cute. Thanks, Ramona. Okay, so I'm curious if anybody has any ideas of what Thorntooth the dragon wants. Some people would call this the motivation, I don't know. I've actually never taken a creative writing class, so I don't use those terms like climax and conflict and things as much. Okay, no suggestions. Okay, it seems like this is more Laura Leeds demonstrating how to just create something off the bat instead of the back and forth, which is different. But okay, I'm gonna say that since the name Thorntooth, which I like the alliteration, of course, what pops in my head is, because I've been outside with the flowers, it's like every rose has its thorn. So I immediately think of some sort of rose, because also Ramona just posted some roses. So maybe Thorntooth is a gardener or florist, or I don't know, has something to do with roses. So also that's just sort of pretty imagery. With dragon and roses. I don't know. It's very romantic. So yeah. So I guess let's say it's Thorntooth. Let's see. I really am missing the back and forth. Okay. So Thorntooth. Let's say he's a master. Yeah, maybe he's a master gardener. So let's see. Great. Now to draw roses. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to give him a little rose with little thorns on it. So he's got a little rose. Actually, it sort of almost reminds me of, what was that story? Frederick the bull that like didn't want to fight. And so, he wants to like smell roses, smell the flowers instead, which is very against type, because you would think a dragon would be all erg, arg. But maybe he's sort of a soft dragon. Okay, so maybe he is a gardener. So I'm going to draw him flying above his garden, because also I want to draw the setting that we're in. So let's see. Maybe he's flying. So I'm going to draw down here. These are really simple roses. Dun, dun, dun. They're roses. We're using our imaginations. Maybe somewhere like this way. Is that a tulip? Oh, that's terrible. You see, when making comics, you don't have to be the best artist. Really, it's just drawing something. This would be better with like color. Okay, so we got some grass down here. Like I said, this is really simple. I'm gonna draw like a little butterfly. Okay, so Thorntooth the dragon and his awesome rose garden. Okay, so we have a character with a passion, and they're in a setting. Now, the other thing that you need to come up with at this point is some other character for your character to interact with, because it's a pretty boring story if it's only your character just flying around talking to themselves. I mean, you could do that. But normally it's better if there's another character for them to play off. It just makes much more dynamic universe. So it might be a friend, it might be a sidekick, it might be a family member, it could be a frenemy, it could be an adversary, like a rival. It could be, a lot of things. So I'm curious if anybody has any suggestions for the other character in Thorntooth's universe. If anyone wants to chime in. This is my art nerd dare. Give me some random ideas. Because it could be another dragon. Maybe, I don't know, one of his flowers comes alive, Little Shop of Horrors style. Maybe it's, there's another, like, I don't know, maybe he has another gardener, like a Hagrid type gamekeeper. You can go in like a lot of directions. Because also, when you make these decisions, you're also deciding sort of what universe they are in. Like, is this dragon in a universe of all dragons? Or is this dragon sort of in a human world? So to me, I find that when I'm asking questions and just making one decision at a time, that's how I'm actually building my world. Ooh, let's see. A giant slug who eats the flowers. Ooh, an adversary. A little bird or cat. Oh, a sweet little animal ally. And oh, a deer who eats the roses. Ooh, we got 2 threats. A deer and a giant slug. Ooh, I like these. I feel like everything is so rosy in Thorntooth's world right now. Maybe he does need a little bit of conflict. What do you think the slug? Well, I do think the slug is a great visual pair for the dragon, because the dragon is like up flying really fast and a slug is like down here really slow. So I think that is a pretty fun pairing. Visually though, I'm gonna have to like do a zoom in, I think, because okay, I'm gonna draw. Also, I'm like, okay, what does a slug look like? So I'm gonna draw. I'm gonna draw a little. I'm not sure what they. There's a little. I'm gonna like zoom in. Little arrow. It's kind of confusing. Whatever. My brain. Okay. I should have done like a little magnifying glass. Whatever. Okay, so we got. They got like. Do they have like little antennae? Is that what they look like? And he's got like. He's like, yum, yum. Is that? I don't know. He's like holding on to like a pedal. Okay, so I got a weird blobby slug. And now slug needs a name, which it could just be slug. I don't know. Because slug is slug. Or an S name. Thank you, Emily. I'm a professional artist. Now, this is what always happens when I draw stuff in front of people. It reveals that I work a lot better with visual reference, like a lot of people do. Like if I want to draw a real slug, then I'll look at a photo of a slug. But drawing from my head, I am just going with what is in my file cabinet, which is more of like a 3rd grade drawing level. So I'm gonna call, yay! I guess I'm gonna call, let's see, slug, an S name with slug. Slide the slug. Slug the pug. Sluggo, slim, I'm just gonna call him Slug. Oh, Slug. Okay, so Slug is eating on these roses. So I'm gonna have like some, like, maybe this is like a dead rose. I don't know. This is sort of where I'm gathering all the ingredients for my world. Like I was talking about the diorama metaphor. You're just sort of building like a terrarium. Like, okay, this is the world and these are the characters, but then you press play. So this is where I'm gathering all my ingredients. And I find that normally at this point, once I draw the characters and the setting and just like, even just a little bit of, their faces show me their personality, then my imagination just starts putting stuff together. Doug! Oh, Doug the Slug! Doug the Slug. Doug the Slug. Oh, that's even better. Okay, so Thorntooth the Dragon and his prized rose garden, and then Doug the Slug, who's eaten said roses. So things are not so sunny for Thorntooth. Okay, so that's step number 1. Pull that aside. So we got our characters. They have names. We have a passion. We have a setting. These are all the ingredients that we need. So next is writing the story. Boo. No, writing, don't be scared. Just think of it as making a plan, because I was intimidated about writing a book at all because I'm not a writer, but you don't have to do it like anybody else. So to me, I'm going to break it down into, let's see, I got our 6 panels. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. All right, hold on. I really should have like an easel. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Six panels. Good. Okay. So I think of our 6-panel comic, I think of it as in sort of like thirds. So we have 1/3, 2nd third, 3rd third. So we're going to start off with the first third, but then we're going to have to figure out the end. Because I find that if you just keep going, then you hit a wall. You hit what's actually I call the 80% wall, where you don't know how to finish your story. So we're going to start off doing great and then have to figure out how it ends. And that way you can do the connective tissue to get there. And I find that this is a lot more successful than you just start and then you see where it takes you. So it's just like a little extra intent. So the first panel is called, So your first panel is called the establishing shot, because this is where you are establishing where your story is and who is in your story, because you don't want your reader to immediately be confused. So the establishing shot, it might actually be something similar to what you did for your, I also call this my mood board, where I'm gathering all my ingredients. It might be similar to this, sort of establishing your character, doing the thing that they're passionate about. This is a classic opening in stories, which is you see in like movies and musicals and things, where it starts off with your character like, oh, I have a dream. And that way, when something gets in the way of them making their dream happen, then you're rooting for them. You're like, curse that Doug. I think I'm a little behind, so I gotta, no, I'm not behind. Okay. Just double checking my time. Since an hour flies by. Okay, so here, let's see, I'm gonna switch over to here. I put him up. I'll put him up over here. Let's see. Can we see him? Kind of. Okay. Problem solving. Okay, so our establishing shot. I'm gonna have Thorntooth the dragon. I guess maybe in the garden, like pruning or doing some sort of maintenance, like admiring, wow, like look at my garden. I hope, made to give it a sense of urgency. You could have a driving force like, oh, there's a flower show or a competition or something that makes it more more important. The roses are thriving and doing well, which makes Doug the slug even more of like an issue. So I'm curious if anybody has any idea as to what Thorntooth wants to do with the roses. Dancing. Okay. Well, I'm just gonna go with, let's see, maybe a best. Yeah, I'm just gonna, some sort of competition, some sort of rose competition. So just make up something. So I'm going to start off in my thumbnail. It's going to be really simple. Let me switch over to the screen. It's going to be super simple because also it's really little and this is a big fat pen. Let's see. Oh, here, let's. Okay, so let's have let's see. Roses. These are roses. Yeah, kind of. Okay, so this is more like close up. So I'm going to have so he's going to be like holding on, like maybe like sniffing, like sort of like, oh, I just realized don't they have like little spikes? Oh, I should give them little spikes. Or is that dinosaurs? Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Okay. Okay, maybe we see like a little bit of the wing. Okay. Maybe maybe Thorntooth has like a little belt with like some scissors or something, you know, accessories. Because the little details actually help like really tell your story. So maybe here Thorntooth is thinking, because of course you got the, I don't know if you can see. Okay, it's got the little cloud here for a thought bubble. And maybe Thorntooth is thinking like, oh, my flowers will win best in show for sure this year. My flowers will win this year. It's also, this is exposition, you know, because maybe this also is sort of implying that maybe he hasn't won for a while. Like maybe this year is my shot, something like that. And so then normally the next panel would be good for introducing another character, like everything is fine and rosy in this garden, but then dun dun dun. So actually I could set it up here by putting really small, I could put little slug, like real small, on one of the roses. Because in comics, you're always sort of setting up the next panel in the previous one, especially if you only have 6 panels. So I'm gonna like put little Doug the slug in here. He's like, nom, nom. So he's like, tasty. So then maybe this next panel will be when Thorntooth sees, maybe notices a rose that's like chomped and then sees Doug. That's like an extra step. Maybe he'll just see Doug. Because also when you're writing your story, you're thinking about what do you want to like build up and create more suspense versus just get to the point. So we're just going to get to the point. So he's like, oh, my flowers are going to be so great. And then like zoom in. So I'm going to draw like, wait, does he have like a little face? I don't know, slugs. He looks sort of like a cat? A horse? I don't know. Okay. So he's got like a leaf. He's like chowing down. Okay, so yeah, I'll just write Doug. When in doubt, label things. Wow. Okay, so maybe here we see like, let's see, more like, oh, he looks like a horse. Oh, let's make him look. He's like, ah! So here I've zoomed in to see the slug bigger, and now we have like a close-up, like, oh no. You also I could change this dialogue to Thorntooth being like, oh, this rose is messed up. Like, what's wrong? Like, they're all looking so great. So you could sort of angle it that way, which is why I do the text last, because you can change it as you go. Okay, it's like, oh no, my roses. Because also the dialogue is what we call exposition. So he could say something here like, oh no, this slug is eating my roses. So ideally you should make it clear through the slug is eating the roses. But in case you want to be like really clear, you can have like, you know, the dialogue sort of explain what's going on. Because also sometimes if your art, you draw it and it doesn't look like clear of what you're trying to say, the dialogue can really help you make it more clear. Okay, so we're already a third of the way through our comic, and now we got to figure out how it ends. So our dragon, he wants to win this flower competition, and the slug is in the way. So our question is, does Thorntooth get what he wants? Or does he not get what he wants? Because if he gets what he wants, then it's a comedy. And if he doesn't, then it's a tragedy. And if they get what they want, but it's not how they expected, then it's more of a dark comedy. So it's funny when I work with kids, like we often go into like a dark direction, which is always really, you know, it's fun for me because I don't know. I love when my characters get what they want, but sometimes it's fun to sort of, I don't know, throw them into some crazy situations. So let's see. Thorntooth enjoys the taste of cat slug hybrids. Oh no. Oh yeah, maybe my roses have slime. Oh yeah, maybe he's like leaving a little slime. He's like a slimy slug. Yeah, because he could notice here, like, oh, there's slime. Like, where is it going? He follows the trail and he finds them. Okay, see, once you get started, that's when you figure it out. It's like when you're creating a story, you're building the bridge while you're flying it. So even just talking through it here, I'm figuring a lot out. So I'm curious, internet, does Thorntooth end up getting into this, getting his roses into this garden show and win? Does Thorntooth get what Thorntooth wants? Like, how much do we like Thorntooth? So if anybody has any opinions, Doug and Thorntooth become besties and grow roses just for Doug. Oh, see, this is also a classic sci-fi. I always think of sci-fi with this. Perhaps because I was just watching an episode of Star Trek Next Generation that sort of taps into that if Doug has needs to survive, that maybe there's another way for Doug to get roses and what he needs, and so they can both be happy. So that is a good idea. Because also, it's a lot easier to do problem solving with other characters, but it helps you also learn better how to solve problems in your real life. Okay, so we know it's going to end with with Thorntooth, with the roses being protected and being in the show and like doing great, and Doug has maybe his own designated flower bush that's only like slugs only. But to get to that point, they need to get to some agreement because that implies that they become friends. So they need to have a little bit of dialogue to show them coming together so that Thorntooth doesn't just, breathe fire on him and murder him, that he comes to an understanding like, oh, Doug is a slug and he has a right to be here just like I do. So let me think. So we know we're going to end with like the flowers on the roses. So here we'd have to have, see, this is where I like corkboard because then I can write down the different steps and move them around. In fact, I'll just do it out loud. Because also I'm skipping the script step where you write down the 6 things that happen and then thumbnail it. I'm sort of doing both steps at once, so it's a little harder for me to improv. Okay, my roses. So maybe this panel will be when Doug is like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm just really hungry. Like, your roses taste so good. So flattery, that's a very good thing to do when a dragon is angry at you. You flatter them. So maybe here Doug's like, oh, but you're like, I'm a really picky eater. Like, I only eat organic rose. You can sort of look at jerk in there. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in closer to just Doug for this panel. Here, let me come closer. Because also, I'm showing you guys that we're switching up the camera angles. So it's like we start far away, get closer, and now we're going to get even closer. So maybe Slug turns around. Maybe he's like, oh, that's his arm. He has like tiny little arms, and he's on a flower petal. He's on a leaf or something. And little tiny eyebrows. So he's like, oh, maybe he's sweating because he's scared. Visual indicators are always helpful to imply what's going on with your little tiny character face. So maybe here, Doug had like, maybe he's also, they're both sort of like, oh no, like, it's bad for everybody. So maybe down here he's like sweaty, and so he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Maybe his home environment was he was lost because of development, and so that's why he lost his previous food source. I don't know. You can depends how much detail you want to get into. So I'm just gonna say like, I'm sorry, your roses taste so good. Your roses are the best. It's funny that Slug is like, oh, your roses are the best, which is what Thorntooth wants. It's just not how he thought. The roses are the best of what's around. And I'm so hungry. Maybe it's a mama slug and she's trying to like support her new baby. I don't know. See, now I'm just going down all these rabbit holes. Okay, so next one sounds like it would be Thorntooth developing empathy for poor little Doug the Slug. So maybe here would be like, oh, oh, that's so sad, or maybe he's like, oh, really? They're the best? But you can't eat them all because I have a flower show. And maybe that's when they're like, oh, well, I have an idea. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom back out for this one. Oh, sorry if you can't see it as clearly. It's hard to light well, but not over to blow out the paper here. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm also in the restaurant. I'm very hungry. So maybe here we see. Actually, I'm gonna have Thorntooth pick up Slug. That little tiny. He's like a little tiny slug in his hand. Sort of a human hand. Well, whatever. Dun, 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 dun. His little no. Like I said, this is a thumbnail sketch. Okay, so maybe here, Thorntooth is like, it's also the eyebrows. It's all about the eyebrows. So giving him more like the sympathetic eyebrows here. So like maybe like a finger. Maybe a finger like he's thinking, yeah. Like, you think they're the best? Okay, so he's like, oh, you really think they're the best? It's like, oh, yeah. So maybe this one is when they propose, like, well, what about if maybe there's a way that we both can get what we want. And then the final panel will just be showing Doug the Slug with his rose bush, and maybe Thorntooth is like coming home with like a ribbon. Like, oh, I did it. And it's like, we did it. Like you didn't do anything. Because also this is sort of like a confidence boost. So maybe up here, maybe we'd make Thorntooth more desperate up here. So like, oh, I hope, like there's some imperative, like to make it like, oh, he really needs this confidence boost. And the Slug is sort of giving him confidence boost. Nice. So I get maybe the Doug the Slug suggests it. The best. So I'm going to change this dialogue. But I need to enter them in the show. Well, whatever. Okay. So maybe here, Doug the Slug, we'll close up on him again in hands. That's, it's kind of a backwards hand. Maybe he has like a little light bulb where he's like, I have an idea. I'm like, I don't have an idea. You can always do the trick in comics of having like, you know, later or the next day or, you know. So I'm going to draw like a little, maybe a little banner at the bottom. Later that summer. And then the last panel, I'll have like a bush with like a sign in front of it that's like for slugs only or something. Or like this is Doug's rose bush. Slugs in the grass. Who knows? Maybe Doug the slug has like a slug family that it comes to and they, you know, make a new home. Because maybe Thorntooth is really lonely out here and he needs company. So he's been fixated on like winning the prizes, but maybe he also needs a friend. Because friendship is also the #1 driving motivation for characters and for people. So gonna have Doug with like, I'm just gonna give a trophy just because like a trophy. He's like, wow, this is so small. It's a little challenging. Maybe he like swoops in and has trophy, first place. Oh, also, we don't have their names in here because you need to work their names into your script so we know what their names are. So maybe in the first panel, Thorntooth is talking to himself, so thinking to himself, so like, oh, Thorntooth, your flowers will do great this year. Oh no, my roses. Oh, okay. So the best thing I need. So maybe in this panel, we'd have Doug introduce himself. I'm sorry, roses aren't the best around. So hi, my name is Doug. Okay, so that like works in. So maybe here, Doug is like, Thorntooth, you did it. And Thorntooth is like, we did it. I don't know. We both win. Yay. And it's like happy. And maybe there's the other rose bushes back here that's like for show. Okay. This is our masterpiece. It's kind of probably really a little bit hard to see. So I'm going to flip my screen over to the Facebook. I'm curious if we need a title for this masterpiece. Let me click on that. Okay. I guess I'm not seeing comments. So, okay, for a title, I will just come up with a title. So normally the title is what I figure out last. And the title, a lot of times it can include, like what I'll normally do for a title is I'll look at my script that I wrote out, like the 6 things that happened, and I'll just look for the key words that pop out at me. So I'll, like just nouns of the words that are most prevalent in your story. So like dragon, rose, friendship, garden, you know, I will look at those words and think about what pops out to me as capturing the energy of your story. And it might also have the name of your main character or the two characters. So for this one, let me think. And of course, I love puns and alliteration when it comes to titling. So maybe every rose has its slug, because I said that song lyric before, so that's rattling around in my head. Every rose has a slug. I don't know. So unless someone else has a better idea, that's what I'm gonna Oh, slimy roses. Slimy roses. Okay, so that means like, oh no, my roses are slimy. Okay, because if we have the title of Slimy Roses, then you really gotta like make sure that I'm fitting that in there. Slug slime. So maybe like there's like a slime reference down here too. Do you think every rose has a slime? See, slimy roses, it does sound a little, like gross factor. So I think I might go with every rose has a slug. Because also that's sort of, I don't know, to me that captures more the spirit of like, it has there's more of a positive. So I'm just gonna write the title here. Every rose has a slug. And boom, we've made a comic.